Happy Friday night to everyone. I'm Daryl Steinberg, your mayor, and thank you for joining me for another edition of Facebook Live. I want to begin by wishing all the mothers out there a happy Mother's Day. I know this is a unique Mother's Day, and I know that there are a lot of moms out there that are working so hard under extraordinary circumstances, working, helping your kids while they're at home, trying to go to school through distance learning and trying to keep up with family and friends in the oddest time in our lifetimes. And I just wanted to say happy Mother's Day to my mom, to my wife, and to all the mothers out there, and my mother-in-law. I hope Sunday is a wonderful day where you get to connect with your loved ones and know how much you are appreciated. I wanted to take the time tonight to explain the events of the last days, especially as it relates to the key question of reopening our economy, and more importantly, where we go from here. And I know there's a lot of numbers and statistics and rules and orders, and I want to kind of just break it down and get back to the basics here for a moment, because I think it leads to a better understanding of where we're at and what is likely to happen over the next couple of weeks. The state, first of all, has primary authority. They say what we can not do for the public health. In other words, they set the standard, and they say that you can, if we don't say you can't do it, then you can do it. Counties can be more restrictive. They can't be more flexible than the state, but they can be even more restrictive if counties believe that they want to do more. Now, most counties have not done that, but that is allowed. The state can tell counties that for some issues and some questions about the pace of reopening and what can be reopened, that the counties can have flexibility if they are making more rapid progress towards meeting the public health objectives of the state's order. So that's just the basics. Now, 2 weeks ago, as it appeared that California was flattening the curve and the expected hospital surge did not actually materialize, the state, through Governor Newsom, indicated that it would begin considering the month-plus long order applied everywhere, which we know we have been living with for a long time, that essentially said that but for essential activities, including essential employment, that everybody has to stay inside. And of course, the exceptions for life are medical appointments, grocery store, the ability to get outside and get some fresh air, but it has been very restrictive. Some variation, even under that old order, was allowed between the counties. For example, in Sacramento County, our county said it was okay for construction work to continue, which I think was a wise decision. In other counties, the Bay Area, for example, they decided no construction other than affordable housing. They changed that recently, but for a while, that was a difference, and that was, in fact, allowed by the state. All of us in positions of elected and appointed leadership are feeling the pressure to reopen, but not for the reasons that many people may think. Let's be honest with each other here. This pandemic is inconvenient. It's hard. It's sad. The thought of not being able to go visit my mom on Mother's Day, that's sad. It's inconvenient. It's disruptive. And yes, it does affect our freedom, the freedom that we are used to go wherever we want, whenever we want. Safe protests against these orders are to be respected. As I said many times over the last couple of weeks, that is the American way. But I am clear on the balance. If the choice is between inconvenience and doing more to keep seniors, people with vulnerable health conditions, and all of us safer, and if it's a close call between that inconvenience and safety, I am all for the public health and the public safety. There is no pressure for me, and I don't believe there's pressure, frankly, that the governor feels to do anything other than the right thing and protect the public health. But there is a different kind of pressure, which I feel, which I know the governor feels, which all people in elective office feel, and that requires us, all of us in positions of leadership and responsibility, to consider the fragile balance between the public health and the economic devastation for thousands of people. Today, another monthly jobs report came out in the country. 20.5 million people have filed unemployment claims, a 14.7% unemployment rate, the highest since the Great Depression. Even during the last terrible recession, when I was your senator and Senate pro tem, the unemployment rate was only 8.7%. And so this is a magnitude of economic devastation that we have never seen. And of course, the impact in our Sacramento community is no different than in the rest of the country. Small businesses barely hanging on. Many are going to have to close down. Many people out of work, unable to pay their rent, building up back rent, even if they're not evicted, because our law says you cannot evict somebody during the pandemic. But building up that back rent and then having to pay it when all this is over and maybe not having a job. The economic issues are real, and the balance between the public health and bringing back more people, more small businesses to work so that they can help themselves and support themselves and their families, that is a balance that is not easy, where there are no right or wrong answers. But in real time, the governor, the county health officials, all elected officials at the local level are weighing this every day and trying to get it right. We know this: the economic devastation is real, and the stay-at-home order in the way that it had existed up until today actually could not and cannot continue indefinitely. And so this last Tuesday, the governor announced some relaxation of that month-plus long order. He said that effective today, small retail can open up and can deliver the goods, if you will, at curbside. Small manufacturing could open up. Some of that happened today. Read about it, about all that opened in Sacramento, and a lot of joy with small business owners being able to see and serve their customers and be able to get back to activity again. Even though it was a slow first day, I'm hopeful that it will pick up, and let's do everything we can to help our small businesses by shopping at them in the days and weeks ahead. And so that was a limited reopening. The governor's order did not include restaurants, it did not include it did not include offices, it did not include movie theaters, it didn't include a lot of other things. It was very limited. But the governor did say something else really interesting on Tuesday. He said that if counties could meet strict criteria in terms of not just how they're dealing with the crisis, but actual results in terms of a continuation of the flattening of the curve, that he would give the counties the authority to choose to open restaurants, to choose to open office buildings, to choose to open movie theaters, and to go broader than what has been allowed as a matter of state law today. And so the criteria came out yesterday, the actual criteria. And I want to go through it with you because these details are important, because all of this is affecting your life in a real way. And I want to make sure that you understand what the criteria are and what some of the underlying thinking is behind the conclusions and where it leaves us here in Sacramento. First of all, the criteria said that a county, in order to take advantage of this authority to open more, let's use restaurants, to be able to open restaurants and more, could only have one case per 10,000 people the last 2 weeks. Now, we have a population of about 1.5 million. Did the math. We could have had up to 155 cases and qualified. We only had 83 cases. Those are 83 real people, by the way, and I hope that they are okay. But still, check that box. We qualified. The governor said yesterday that we have to have enough testing to test 0.15% of our residents every day. That's about 2,000 tests per day. We're not quite there yet, but we are getting there. Dr. Beelance and the county have done a great job working with UC Davis to increase the amount of testing. They're going to open a number of community testing sites, I believe, over the next week or so. And so check, we will meet that criteria. We need to make sure that we have enough protective equipment for our healthcare workers. Check. There's still issues, but we are doing fine there. We need to have enough shelter for 15% of our residents experiencing homelessness. Our last point in time count, 5,570 homeless, 0.15, that's 884 additional beds. We have a plan with the county to stand up 990 new rooms. Check. We meet that criteria. Do we have enough hospital capacity in case there is a surge to take on the additional patients? Well, since the surge that we expected over the last month has not materialized, we in fact do have enough hospital capacity. Check. 6 criteria. We need to have enough contact tracing. I'm going to explain what that is in a moment. 15 contact tracers per 100,000 residents. In other words, we need 200 to 300 people in Sacramento who go through a 20-hour training course to be able to contact people who have been in contact with those who test positive, to make sure that they get isolated, unfortunately, for 14 days so that we are reducing, if you will, the spread from those who came into contact with those who test positive. While we do not yet have enough contact tracers, the city has been involved. I've been directly involved in working with Mayor Cabaldon in West Sacramento, with our county health officers, and with our community colleges to recruit, and our community leadership led by Chet Hewitt and the Sierra Health Foundation, who was on this show earlier this week, to recruit enough people to be able to meet that number within the next number of days, certainly, hopefully no longer than a week. And by the way, if we can recruit through the community colleges, we can begin establishing some form of certification and potential career pathway for those 200 to 300 people, so that once the contact tracing ends, they have the work experience and hopefully the beginning of a career pathway in an allied health field. And so there's a lot of good to be done there. But I'm going to say on that one, check, because I think we are within a number of days or a week from being able to stand up that new temporary workforce. And then there's the 7th criteria. And what the state said was no more than 1 death over the last 2 weeks. Now, we are doing really well, and 1 death is too many. But over the last 2 weeks, Sacramento County has experienced 9 deaths. Those are 9 human beings, real people with families. Our hearts, our sympathies go out to their families. But we do not meet that criteria. And so we cannot legally open restaurants and go broader than the limited retail curbside pickup openings that I talked about a moment ago. And so we cannot do that. Now, let me put that into context. 95% of California's counties do not meet the criteria that I just described, and mostly because of the requirement that there be no new death over the last 2 weeks. No county in Southern California qualified, no county in the Bay Area qualified, and Sacramento did not qualify. A number of counties representing 5% of the state, did, but they are the smaller counties. And so what's going on here? Why is it that there are these criteria put out, but they're written in such a way where, it's really impossible for larger counties to be able to meet them? This is the question we've been getting, of course, over the last couple of days. And I want to explain it. And I want to explain why I agree with the underlying rationale. The virus is not gone. In fact, all of the health experts I talk to, without scaring people or having anybody feel already more anxious than you already feel, we expect that there are going to be numerous phases of this. And frankly, in some of the phases, even when the numbers go down, there are going to be real spikes. And the question is, how big will the spikes be? Because in urban areas, for example, large counties, if we were to move too fast and without having enough testing, even though we have enough testing to meet the criteria, there's not enough testing in the state, there's not enough testing in the country to be sure. And we see a big spike in Sacramento County. To save lives and to protect the health of people, we would then have to go far backwards to the stay-at-home order that even pre-existed today, and it would be much harder then to move forward again. So here's what the state is doing. What essentially they're doing is they're saying, let's start this controlled experiment with 5% of the counties, mostly the smaller counties. Santa Cruz County qualified, but they're mostly small rural counties. And if over the next 7 to 10 days, they find that even in opening up those counties, some of them are doing so against the governor's order, even prior to being certified, which I think is unfortunate. But once they get the authority and they open up, and they'll probably open up in a very broad way, and we don't see a spike in additional cases in those counties, that will then be a green light. And I think it's about 7 to 10 days. That'll be a green light then for the state to look at some of the larger counties like Sacramento County and say, all right, now we will give you the ability to experiment in a controlled way, opening up more than we're allowing you to open up now. And so this is a delicate and really precarious balance. There are lives at stake, life and death. There are also lives at stake on the other end where if people cannot make a living, then that has a dramatic effect, not just on our overall economy, but on their lives and even their health as well. And so let us see what happens over the next 7 to 10 days in these small counties that are getting the authorization to move forward and to open up the restaurants and the movie theaters and the malls. And let's hope that the people do the right thing, that people wear masks, that they still practice the physical distancing, that there is not a spike, and that gives then the state and our counties a little bit more confidence that if we open up in that way, that we're not going to set ourselves back and instead be able to move ourselves forward. I know that was a long explanation, but I really wanted to break it down because it's hard to follow all this stuff. And I, of course, am following it. And I hope that I broke it down in a way that it was understandable and gives you a sense of the logic and what we can look forward to and what we need to look towards over the next 7 to 10 days, especially in those smaller counties, which are going to get the permission to be able to open up broader than Sacramento. And of course, we also have control over our own futures by how we behave and whether or not we continue to practice the physical distancing, whether we decide to take the mask issue seriously, whether or not it is actually required over the next week in Sacramento County. I'll leave that to Dr. Bulenson and the county, but it is the right thing to do, and it gives us a better chance of being able to move faster forward than stay where we are at now. Let me shift for a minute to some really heartening news. Yesterday was the big day of giving in Sacramento. This is the annual day where nonprofits and charities throughout the community raise a ton of money to support their very, very important efforts. Everything from food to homelessness to the arts to the community-based organizations that serve immigrants and serve families. And so last year, in a good year, no pandemic, the community raised $8.4 million. This year, pandemic, economic anxiety, obviously a lot of people hurting, a lot of people out of work. You'd think, well, the number would go down, up. Well, we only raised $5 million, but good effort. Raised $11.97 million, almost $12 million in donations, a significant increase benefiting 615 great Sacramento organizations. And they added a component this year. They asked people to volunteer their time. 1,051 volunteers pledged over 68,000 hours of volunteerism. I got to tell you, I am always proud of my community. But yesterday, to see these numbers in the midst of this crisis, unbelievable. Sacramento stands tall. The biggest recipients were the food banks, which, because food insecurity, of course, has become such a huge issue. And I'm just grateful to all who gave and all the organizations who serve. I want to give you an update on the homeless issue because it's really, really important as well. Number one, we've tested everyone in the congregant shelters, the existing shelter system. I believe nobody tested positive. So that's very, very good. As importantly, I want to tell you that this Operation Room Key or Project Room Key, started by the state, but in partnership with counties and cities, is really taking off. We now have 3 motels, 420 rooms. The third motel opened this week, a motel with 157 rooms. So in total, 420 rooms. 321 individuals are now in those rooms, 294 households. 13,000 meals were served to people on the streets over the last month by wonderful organizations that just do everything they do so humbly. 56 hand washing stations, 49 additional toilets. But the key is this trailer and motel strategy, because we will go from 321 individuals to, I'm sure, well over 500. The goal is to fill up all 990 of those rooms. And again, that's more than just 990 individuals because there are a lot of family units. We can touch and bring inside 1,000 or more people during this period and then help permanently rehouse them, which we're working on in real time as well, and make a big dent in this problem and show going forward the way for the county, the city, and the state to work together to meet that goal that I set out as chair of the governor's task force on homelessness, which is to make living inside a legal right, and to require all of us in power, any kind of power, to have the legal obligation to ensure that everybody has some kind of a roof over their head. Let me move to the great opportunity that the city has over the next couple of months to invest directly in our economic recovery. I reported to you before that the city, because of its intent to grow in a sustainable way, met the 500,000 population threshold set by the Congress, and we qualified for direct federal stimulus. 2 weeks ago, we got a wire service transfer. I tweeted it out because I've never seen something that big, for $89+ million. This week, I wrote a letter to my colleagues and to the community in which I outlined a potential structure for how we might invest that money. Now, my job as mayor is not to decide but it is to help start the conversation among my colleagues on the city council, among the community, and to put out a value statement and a vision for what we could do with this money. I expect this is going to change. I expect great input from my colleagues, from the community, and so none of this is stuck in any way in concrete, but it's a start. And so the way I approach this was to say, let's take 80 million and divide it into 4 categories. Let's invest $20 million in small business assistance, which is absolutely crucial for all the reasons that we have talked about. Grants, loans, whatever it takes, especially help those who have not qualified for whatever reason for federal stimulus assistance. Secondly, let's put $20 million into workforce development for adults who find themselves out of jobs, but also for younger people who may have been pursuing a career, for example, in tourism and hospitality, which, by the way, would be a great career and will again be a great career in Sacramento. But for now, there may not be jobs over the next 4 to 6 to 12 months. And there's going to be a lot of jobs in the digital area, that's for sure, especially as we're living in the Zoom generation here. Everything is going to go digital. And so we need to rethink and invest in a big way in workforce training for those adults out of work, but those young people, high school, community college, college graduates, and all that are thinking about a different path as a result of COVID-19. 20 million for housing and homelessness. Obviously, homelessness we talk about it a lot, but also affordable housing. We have to delay, unfortunately, our plan to do a $100 million housing bond in Sacramento because of the crisis, but we can get a down payment in ensuring that everybody who is housing insecure, especially as a result of the virus, that we've got answers. More efficiency housing, more manufactured housing, more easy to build housing, more support for tenants and for those who are struggling. We have a lot to do in the housing area, including the rehousing of people, again, that we're bringing into these motels. Finally, 20 million for tourism, arts, and the creative economy. Tourism and arts are becoming the cornerstone of our economy, and our arts organizations are hurting. Tourism is hurting in a big way for all the obvious reasons. There can't be live performances now. We can't fill our hotels. We've got big plans that I'm not casting to the side, at least for the long term, to activate our waterfront in Old Sacramento and go beyond that. And so we've got to put strategic dollars into the arts, into tourism, into neighborhood arts, and yes, even into arts education, so we can create those pathways for young people to be able to pursue a career in the digital arts, for example. And then 9 million left over, either to add to the various pots or to catch a lot of the things that we haven't caught. A lot of different categories within the larger categories, including childcare, for example, which is going to be a big issue for us to be able to elevate so that people whose kids remain at home, depending on how long the distancing requirement exists for schools, they're going to need childcare. And then we need to end the digital divide. A lot of my colleagues and school board members, Jesse Ryan, Mai Vang, my colleague Angelique Ashby, others are working hard on this digital divide issue. And I say we end the digital divide in Sacramento, not just mitigate it. And we use this money in part to help do that. So we have a workshop Tuesday at the City Council, and we're going to begin discussing this. And even though it's going to be a Zoom council meeting, you can call. The number will be advertised on my site and the city clerk's website. And we want to hear from you because this is a crucial decision. We're not making decisions on Tuesday. It's just a workshop. We'll make these decisions over the next 30 to 60 to 90 days. This week, we stood up this incredible food project that we've talked about before, where we have 30 restaurants that we are going to essentially help open and reopen. But they're not going to serve people dining in the restaurant. Instead, they're going to make their food, employ their workers, and we are going to match them with 1,000 seniors starting next week for 3 meals a day. For seniors who want to participate, call 311, and we will make sure that if you're eligible, there are some income criteria that we will get you signed up. And really proud of the city and my team, Julia Burrows and others, for what Zach Yates, for what it is you have done to make this work. We're leading the state in terms of rolling this out. 75% federal reimbursement, 19% state reimbursement. We put in 6%. There isn't a better investment in the world than keeping our restaurants going and feeding seniors. Man, we have covered a lot. Jack Oman today at Sacramento Bee put out a challenge to us. He said other cities around the country are writing songs where they talk about their city and how their city is responding to the coronavirus. And so all of you who are musically inclined out there, I am not musically inclined, though I love music. Why don't you go to our engagesac.org website? Why don't you write me or get in touch with us and come up with your best idea for a Sacramento song that I bet, just like the food program and the other stuff we're doing, will top any other song that's being written by any other musician in any other city. It could kind of be fun here. Go to engagesac.org and you can find all the information about resources, about what we're doing, and how we are all rallying together to deal with this very, very difficult time. I want to end again by thanking the moms, saying Happy Mother's Day to all of you. Have a good, safe weekend. Care for yourself